Welcome to News9. You are watching On Point and I am Karyikeya Sharma. In the first On Point, India sealed its biggest trade deal with Europe. Who gains? Who gets what? And why does it matter for us? In On Point 2, new UGC rules. Land in the Supreme Court is the equity law fair to all students. We discussed this in second On Point. In the third On Point, Trump calls a winter storm proof against global warming. Science fact checks his claim. And finally, in the last On Point, Xi's most trusted general falls from power. What the Perch says about China's military, Xi's dictatorship. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. Grok AI wrongly translate Prime Minister Modi's Maldives post, inserts anti-India campaign, mistranslates a routine goodwill message into negative messaging. Heavy snowfall brings Kashmir to a standstill as Jammu-Srinagar NH44 shuts near Navayuk tunnel. 50 flights cancelled. Trouble continues for Vijay's Jananayagan. HC bench sets aside single judge order. Release of the movie delayed further. India and the European Union announced the conclusion of their long-awaited free trade agreement. The agreement brings together two of the world's largest economic blocs and is being positioned. If you look at the mother of all the deals, tariff of wines reduced from 150% to 20%. So the edibles are also there. Tariffs on fruit juice, processed food down to 0%. So everyday, day-to-day use foods are getting cheaper. Tariffs on cars to be reduced from 110 to 10%. There are so many other things which will be reduced eventually, gradually. For example, wines. That tariff is also going to come down. So number of things like, for example, fruit juice, processed food will be down. Now let me play out the bite of Ursula, the person responsible for hammering out this deal with the Prime Minister.
Dear Prime Minister Modi, distinguished friend. Prime Minister, distinguished friend, we did it. We delivered the mother of all deals. We are creating a market of 2 billion people. And this is the tale of two giants, the world's second and fourth largest economies. Two giants who choose partnership in a true win-win fashion. A strong message that cooperation is the best answer to global challenges. This trade will integrate further our supply chain and strengthen our joint manufacturing power. It will cut up to 4 billion euros in annual tariffs for exporters of all sizes. And it will create good jobs for millions of workers here in India and in Europe. At the same time, this agreement will build on the natural complementarity of our economies. It brings together Indian skills, services, and scale with Europe's technology, capital, and innovation. It will create levels of growth that neither side can achieve alone. And by combining these strengths, we reduce strategic dependencies at a time when trade is increasingly weaponized.
The scale of the agreement is unprecedented. Together, India and the European Union represents a combined market of nearly 2 billion people and accounts for about a quarter of global GDP. Officials say that this makes the India-EU FTA not just a trade deal, but a structural economic partnership between Asia and Europe. The agreement is expected to significantly expand trade, investment, and supply chain integration between the two sides. For India, the focus is on boosting exports, manufacturing and services while protecting sensitive sectors. For example, Indian doctors can now actually work in European Union. Now, let me play the bite of Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
पिछले कुछ वर्षों में भारत और यूरोपियन यूनियन के संबंधों में उल्लेखनीय प्रगति हुई है। साझा लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों, आर्थिक सिनर्जी और मजबूत पीपल टू पीपल टाइज के आधार पर हमारी साझेदारी नई ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंच रही है। आज भारत ने अपने इतिहास का अब तक का सबसे बड़ा फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट संपन्न किया है। आज 27 तारीख है। ये सुखद संयोग है कि आज ही के दिन यूरोपियन यूनियन के 27 देशों के साथ भारत ये एफटीए कर रहा है। यह एक ऐतिहासिक समझौता हमारे किसानों, हमारे छोटे उद्योगों, इसके यूरोपियन मार्केट तक पहुंच आसान बनाएगा, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में नए अवसर पैदा करेगा और हमारे सर्विसेज सेक्टर के बीच सहयोग को और प्रबल करेगा। इतना ही नहीं, यह एफटीए भारत और यूरोपियन यूनियन के बीच इन्वेस्टमेंट को बूस्ट करेगा, नई इनोवेशन पार्टनरशिप बनाएगा और वैश्विक स्तर पर सप्लाई चेन को मजबूत करेगा। यानी यह सिर्फ ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट नहीं है, यह साझा समृद्धि का नया ब्लूप्रिंट है।
The agreement is expected to benefit labor-intensive sectors like textiles, leather, engineering goods, while opening wider access for pharmaceuticals and chemical exports into Europe. Indian exporters are also likely to gain from the lower tariff, currently ranging between 2 and 12% on many products. At the same time, sensitive sectors such as agriculture and dairy have been kept outside to main tariff cut framework to protect domestic farmers.
In our fast-changing world, the strategic partnership between India and the EU has a value beyond the bilateral context, particularly as we witness shifts in the global economic, technological and strategic landscape.
The deal also helps India diversify away from over-dependence on the US and China as exports destinations. For the European Union, the deal opens the door to one of the world's fastest growing consumer markets. European companies are expected to gain from lower tariffs on cars, wines and spirits, along with improved access for machinery, electronics and chemicals. Auto import duties, which currently go as high as 125%, are set to be cut in phases, creating major opportunities for the premium car makers. EU firms also expect gains in services, intellectual property and digital trade. Beyond economics, the deal carries strong geopolitical and strategic weight.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, my dear friend, today is a historic moment. We are opening a new chapter in our relations on trade, on security, on people-to-people ties. I'm the President of the European Council, but I'm also an overseas Indian citizen. Then, as you can imagine, for me, it has a special meaning. I would like to share 3 messages. The European Union and India must work together towards our shared prosperity and security. India is the world's fastest growing major economy. Trade has flowed between our 2 continents for centuries. And trade is crucial geopolitical stabilizer and the fundamental source of economic growth. Trade agreements reinforce rules-based economic order and promote shared prosperity. That's why today's free trade agreement is of historic importance.
Strategically, the FTA helps India reduce dependence on China and shield it from volatility caused by global trade wars. For the EU, it secures alternative supply chains and deeper foothold in Asia. The deal also strengthens India's position as a global manufacturing and supply chain hub, particularly in green energy and high-value manufacturing. Officials say that the agreement reflects a broader shift away from the fragile multilateral trade systems towards trusted bilateral partnership. With trade barriers rising globally and the World Trade Organization under strain, India and the EU are betting on each other for long-term stability. The India-EU Free Trade Agreement now moves to legal scrubbing and ratification, but its announcement today marks a decisive turn in economic diplomacy between two major global powers. Now let me introduce my panel. I'm joined by Jürgen Morhardt, Chairman, German Indus Society and former German Consul General in Mumbai from 2016 to 2022. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me. Ambassador Ujjwal Singh Bhatia, former Indian Ambassador to WTO. Good evening, sir. Thank you again. Air Commodore Dr. Ashminder Singh Bahal and Professor Salma Baba, Center for European Studies, School of International Studies, JNU. Let me straight away go to Jürgen Morhardt. Sir, your opening comments on the deal that has been inked today in New Delhi.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for reaching out to me. I think what we just heard already by all the leaders, of course, says everything. It's historic, it's unique, it's a huge opportunity. But to call it the mother of all deals is a rather statement which has to see, if we can really deliver. So I like to make a point we should not forget. This trade agreement is not a love marriage, right? It could have been done many years before, and it took some time, and the global situation, the geostrategic circumstances, of course, forced us now to move forward. But it's also not really a surprise, because as I was in official capacity, I could see how Europe and India was growing over the years, slowly but steadily, closer together, from the services, to trade, and of course science. We should not forget science cooperations and the mobility. The Indians are very important skilled labor force to us. I see a huge opportunity. I also like to make now, particularly from a German point of view. We just had recently Chancellor Merz's visit here. Now we have this trade agreement, and this will bring India not only economically and politically, but also as a society closer to Europe, because now it will give the boost of interest from Europeans to India. And I think we have now the opportunity, and it's the time when we can correct the image of India and try to educate the Europeans a more modern image of India if we make this trade agreement work.
Mr. Morhardt, why did it take so much of time? And this is just not a trade deal. Prime Minister said in his address, it goes beyond trade. Can you break it down for us when the Prime Minister Modi says it goes beyond trade?
Yeah, what I see, of course, I don't know all the specifics, and I understand, of course, it's historic. It's now that from the very top we have this understanding. What has been concluded in detail, we need a lot of legal scrubbing. We should be realistic about this on both sides until we can have ratification. And of course, we should see that even the best intention from the very top can always be in a way hampered or disturbed during the implementation process. I have been witnessing many FTAs where still an FTA was not able to overcome invisible trade barriers, despite reduction of tariffs, then some invisible regulations and things like that, or bureaucracies which are not cooperating. But we have to be optimistic, and I think the geopolitical conditions now force us to go for its very, very best. And I also hope that during the ratification process, the legal scrubbing, that we will get a big boost also by societies in India and in the European Union countries to endorse it as soon as possible.
Okay, Professor Baba, now the details are out. It gives a lot of things, a lot of markets are opened up from the food, processed food, meat, wines. But in cars, I think there is a graded introduction. Piyush Goyal had to clarify expensive cars and not so expensive cars. He made a special mention of that. If you noticed, madam. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, good evening. Let me say it's not just the mother of all trade deals, but I think it's a political intentionality of bringing two large democracies together to show what combined political action can achieve. I think that's the first strongest political statement. A trade deal is conveying a lot more than that, because in the subtext and in the fine print, there are two other things which have come through, which is the security and defense partnership and mobility. I'll come back to the point you raised upon automobiles. We have to recognize it's a very differentiated market. The German automobiles coming in are the more luxury segment. So I think India does not have that kind of a super luxury segment at this point. So bringing down the tariffs on that would open up this sector for sale in India, but it's also going to be competitive. It also means that it brings in, other competition for existing industry to also scale up and offer, on their various models that they have in India, better features and all. So I think one can see that one should not immediately say that the entire automobile sector is going to take a hit. What has been agreed is still a 40% tariff. It's a come down from 110%, which is welcome. But then again, not everybody in India is in that 40% plus tariff luxury segment. So I think that we need to recognize, although the markets have responded, at least the automobile shares did take a dip earlier in the day.
Yes, Ambassador Bhatia, Piyush Goyal tweeted these 4 things. You break it down for us. He says the win, direct entry into the 2 trillion industrial market. That was the first part of the tweet. Preferential access for Indian engineering goods. The second part of his tweet was the win, 100% duty-free access, shimmering opportunities in 79 billion premium market. The win, tariff slash from 17 to 0%. So we tap into 100 billion EU leather and footwear segment. Then he said the win, immediate zero duty on 100% tariff, lines and value, direct access to the 263 billion EU textile market. Sir.
Yeah, let me start from an Indian perspective. I think this is a major milestone in India's integration with the global economy. This is unlike India's previous FTAs, including those completed recently, like the one with UK and Australia and so on, in its complexity, in the breadth of its coverage, in its details on non-trade issues, and the depth of concessions exchanged. So I think this is going to be a major milestone for Indian industry, and I think this should be welcomed. Now, I would like to respond to your question. I would like to refer to at least 3 sectors. For me, these concessions are going to be game changers for them. The first is the labor-intensive sectors, which Mr. Goyal mentioned. Now, if you, depending on which subsectors you include in that categorization, India's exports last year to European Union from these labor-intensive sectors were roughly $35 to $40 billion. And on an average, these exports face tariffs of about 10%. What this agreement does is to largely bring them down to 0. And many of these exports, like apparel and leather goods and so on, are low-value exports, and the difference between 0% and 10% is between exporting and not exporting. So I would expect a huge surge in exports of labor-intensive products from India, and that translates into greater employment for many hundreds of thousands of people in India. For instance, just to give an example, marine products today involve a tariff of 26%. Leather goods involve a tariff of 17%. From 26% or 17% going down to 0 is a very significant leap. The second sector I would talk about is services and mobility. And this is the sector of our comparative advantage. Now, India has secured commitments from the European Union in 144 subsectors of services. And this is a major development. And especially in terms of movement of skilled personnel, professionals, and so on. There is also the uncapped mobility for students and researchers. Again, a very, very significant development. So overall, I would say that the Indian services are again poised to make major gains through greater access into the European Union. The third sector I would like to talk about is electronics manufacturing. And we are talking about a European market of more than $700 billion. And with this preferential access that we are getting through this agreement, we are going to be, our exports of IT-enabled services, as well as IT hardware and consumer electronics like smartphones, industrial electronics and so on, is going to jump up very sharply. And I think just the way India, the entry of Apple into India and the export of iPhones into the United States surged after that, we are going to witness similar moments as far as electronic manufacturing is concerned from India to the European Union. The last point I'd like to talk about is automobiles, and I think some Indian companies have witnessed negative movements in their stocks today. But this concession that we are talking about affect premium cars, luxury cars, and they constitute maybe 1 or 2 or 3% of the Indian market. The smaller cars have been left untouched, and very significantly, no concessions for the first 5 years on electric vehicles, where companies like Mahindra and Tata's are very strong. So this, in terms of positives, I think it constitutes, it provides greater access for Indian automobile industry into the European Union market. With greater competition, you will witness greater innovation, and integration with European supply chains will largely benefit the Indian automobile industry. Let me stop here.
Absolutely. The God lies in detail. Dr. Bahal, if I just take you through the couple of points of the security and defense pact that has been signed, it entails these things: maritime security, cyber issues, artificial intelligence, emerging and disruptive technologies, hybrid threats, resilience and the protection of critical infrastructure, counter-terrorism and preventing violent extremism, external aspects of fighting organized crime, situational awareness and exchange of information, multilateral coordination, non-proliferation, disarmament, space security, defense, capacity building for partners in security defense, defense initiative and defense industry related matters, international peace, security, training, education, consular matters, women, peace and security. I mean, it's pretty comprehensive.
Karyikeya, first of all, I want to thank you. Thank you for calling with esteemed people and such learned people that are around me in this panel. And secondly, with the speed at which you covered all the points, I do have an artificial intelligence chip in my mind, which is decoding it and quickly telling me what to answer. So when I come to the points, let me tell you this. I consider it a historical moment. I consider that, considering the geopolitical situation of today, where unpredictability and there is a trust deficit, to say that even if you have signed a deal, whether you are able to implement it, like the way the US has been signing, there is signing with many countries and then still coming up after EU's deal, they still came up with 10% tariff, and then they said on Greenland issue 25% tariff if it doesn't work out. So all the way there is a kind of a feeling in the world that there is unilateralism, and that there is a kind of trust deficit, that even if you have a deal, that it is going to work through for future. And third, it is leading to tariff being used as a weapon. And lastly, that I want to say on the point of just this before I go ahead, is that the world today needs multilateralism to come back in. And what best when India already has 18 countries with which it has signed FTA earlier, including UK, Oman, UAE, as well as New Zealand and Australia. And now we are signing with 27 countries together as one part, which means 45 countries or 25% of the world's countries we already have FTAs with. And the reason that multilateralism can again come in, and faith of the world can come in, and stability can come in an unstable environment where 60 conflicts took place last year, I think it's a great moment. It is a historical moment. I have no doubt that with the vision document, which they call it, where they have the agenda and they say that it will be implemented over a period of time, and again phase-wise implementation. If there was a deal which brought in tariffs from 100% to 0%, you will find it is not going to work.
Okay.
So no, I come to last part where,
Okay.
where you talked of defense.
Yes.
And in defense, when we are looking at collaboration in maritime security, and you know, the one word that was used was situational awareness.
Yes.
And the situational awareness actually comes both in the maritime domain awareness as well as the intelligence and sharing of intelligence. It's going to be great whether it is counter-terrorism. It is going to be great whether there are conflicts. And we already have Sea Vision software that we have purchased from US at $131 million, which provides both surface and undersurface intelligence and surveillance capability. So what I want to say is, with the wide spectrum being covered and already a defense industry forum in place, and the visits, the Society of Indian Defense Entrepreneurs who had visited Brussels in December, and the Political and Security Committee had come in September from the EU, I think the roadmap is slowly being brought in, and there was a doubt of whether it will get implemented. I have no doubt in my mind that this may take time, that though these specifics have not come out, that there is greater detail which is going to come out in later. But I have no doubt, if the intent from all sides like it is today, I'm sure that it is going to work out. Maybe a few delays, maybe a few problems, but it will get resolved, and we will see a great partnership emerging between EU and India.
Okay, let me take this question to Jorgen Morat, because this new security and defense partnership will be implemented through a dedicated annual EU-India security and defense dialogue. Sir, what's the potential of this strategic arrangement with both EU and India has forged today?
I would like to repeat I don't want to repeat what all my distinguished co-panelists said here already, because everybody can only underwrite what they are doing. And I just want to make another point again. You know, it's a long-awaited deal and a very, very important step. And I just wanted to conclude also, because we were also targeting and talking about the defense aspects which are outside the FTA. And I'm very convinced that this FTA sends a strong signal to all other sectors to come and foster closer relations, be it in science, be it in education, be it in research, be it in more skilled migration, hopefully also from Germany to India. And I think we'll give a huge boost to those who are not included in FTA to come forward and look also for closer ways of cooperation. And I think this is very, very important, because it brings two continents together which have been rather apart. And this, as Wilbur said, has an incredibly important signal today in a world, you know, where we need, again, multilateralism, where we need a real framework, reliability, trust in each other. I think this is really historic, and I can only congratulate the leaders who signed it today. And we will have to keep our fingers crossed that it will be implemented as soon as possible.
I think that, you know, a lot of critics say that, you know, it's difficult to survive EU regulations. They're very tough.
Karyikeya, let me comment on that. I mean, I've been doing India-Europe for the last 35 years now. I think what we've seen over here is the security and defense partnership is truly transformative, where both sides have not looked at each other in that context. Trade was what underpinned the relationship. And so I think you have to look, the trade deal is done.
Trade, madam, or economic security? What's the pillar?
The FTA secures economic security, as you correctly say, for both sides in a world where tariff wars have become the new normal. What we have to also see is how India and EU are politically looking at each other with a new lens, from the lens of security, which goes beyond economic security. It is now looking at each other from the lens of defense security. We have very good defense partnerships with a few countries, but this is truly beyond that. We're also looking at a security of information agreement where classified information will be exchanged between both sides. Now that is an indication of trust building on both sides. And I think that is extremely important of a political message which is going out along with the other parts of what have come through from the summit.
Okay, Jorgen, let me ask this question. Are we together because of shared cultural, economic, political values, or are we together because of the external circumstances, in effect because of Trumpian politics and the war which Russia is waging in Europe?
Yeah. Okay, I would say that the two continents, the societies, the economies have been growing together unnoticed and without external pressure or external framework as an FTA. The FTA now gives a boost, and the FTA certainly has been speeded up because of the external worldwide uncertainties created during the last year. And these have been processes which were reinforcing each other, but I have seen already underlinings that we were coming together anyhow on many sectors, and we are just now lucky that we get these outside boosters to speed up a process which was already under its way.
Absolutely. Ambassador Bhatia, your comments on this? What is more important, external circumstances, sir?
Well, I think the geopolitics of today have quite possibly accelerated the long drawn, almost 2 decades long negotiations.
Absolutely.
So I don't think you can separate them. I think you have to take it as a whole. The interest of both sides coincide at this present moment, and therefore the acceleration. And I think it to the extent that they provide mutual benefit, I think is all for the good.
Okay, and I'll take closing comment from Dr. Bahal. Dr. Bahal, Ukraine did find mention here. It didn't escape the speech. It's very important.
Absolutely. And India can play a major role in that. That's what they feel, primarily because we have very close relationship initially with the Soviet Union and subsequently with Russia. And about 60% of our defense equipment comes from Russia. And the people-to-people contact also, there is tremendous love and affection between the Russians and us. So yes, our Prime Minister Modi, who's known to be a great diplomat, so can play a major role in bringing both of them towards this final solution, which is already underway. And because it's being done by Americans, there is little faith in the European community today, whether they're going to get the just deal or not. And that is the reason why Costa mentioned about the just solution of the Russian-Ukraine war.
Using the word just deal. I think the word that was used was just peace.
Absolutely. Yes, just peace. I agree with you. Just peace. You're right, absolutely. The word used was just peace, but it actually means that just and durable peace means it is going to be sustainable. It is going to exist for a long time, and both sides feel win-win. Like in terms of the EU FTA deal, we do feel win-win situation here because there is a large amount of consumers that will be sent, which will be bought by the Indians because of a large middle-class community, and that will bring a great amount of trade to European Union, means our imports from the European Union. So there is win for them and there is win for us, because we are looking at capital and technology from the West and our intellectual mind and labor from India. And this is where I personally feel that if we follow the models that we are presently doing with Safran, or we are doing with Rafale, Dassault Aviation, and if the capital also comes, like 500 million euros has been said that will be brought in for bringing in green transition into India, and I think that's a great thing that is going to happen. But if the capital and the technology from the West, and if the human mind technical inputs and technical labor from skilled labor from India, I think we can really build great manufacturing units here, which can help European Union also for their defense needs, as well as help the manufacturing sector in both the countries and bring in transformation in jobs.
Okay, though I said it was the last question, but I have one question for Professor Baba. Does European Union speaks in one voice? Are there different voices within the framework? Are we homogenizing the large set, simplifying it for our viewers, missing the complexity of voices, people, communities that Europe comprises?
So in class, I always say that the EU is a strange political animal. We have to recognize that it talks both in a single voice and in multiple voices. Trade is one area where there is common competence at the European Union level, and that's why it was able to come through.
Yes.
But like, the other panelists have pointed out as well, it still has to go through the European Parliament. Member states do have reservations. There has been an attempt to iron down and bring it out. But current geopolitical challenges has also produced impetus within the European Union to at least speak coherently. There was a time when Henry Kissinger famously said, give me a phone number to call Europe. Well, there is a phone number now. It is called the High Representative, and she has a name and face. But Europe does tend to sometimes, sing in harmony, and other times it seems to be having to be singing on multiple music sheets. But what we have today in terms of coming together is the summit, the FTA, and definitely the ability to show that when they need to speak together, they can do.
The reason why I asked this question to you was that for the first time, I think must have been earlier also, that Europe is not falling in line with what Trump is saying.
Yes, we have seen a very dramatic break in what we call the West. There is no single West now. There is a transatlantic two Wests. There's an American side and a European side. And perhaps the shock has been all the more profound on the European side to see something in terms of long-standing 80-year partnership being tested to its ultimate limits. Every partnership goes through moments of crisis, but perhaps this is the remaining 3 years of the Trump presidency will go down as something which will historically transform what we know of the European Union.
Absolutely. Thank you all of you for joining me. Thank you so much for this riveting conversation which I had on the impact of this FTA. Truly transformative, big leap, big step. For whatever it is, I think a great job has been done by people who negotiated it, because it brings immense opportunities to both Indian and European entrepreneurs, companies and people, because it allows for better, fairer and easier commerce. So this is all I had on point 1. But in on point 2, I'll talk about the new UGC rules that has landed in the Supreme Court. Is the equity law fair to all students? We will discuss this in the second on point, as I said, after a short break.
बहुत टाइड हो गई.
Take a date, not bites. No added sugar, प्रिजर्वेटिव के बिना डेट्स, बादाम, पिस्ता, काजू और शहद से तैयार किया गया Lion Dates Nut Bites. Lion Date Nut Bites.
घर है वही जहाँ सब संग हो, रिश्तों को रंग दो, दुनिया को रंग दो. बिरला ओपस पेंट्स.
तेरी एक जिद और फैक्ट्री वर्कर्स सब डबल.
रिटायर हो जाऊं क्या? अच्छा, बिजनेस के लिए लोन का आइडिया किसका था? पर बुढ़ापा आ गया हो.
इनकी जिद ने कारोबार भी बढ़ाया और रोजगार भी. टाटा कैपिटल बिजनेस लोन्स के साथ.
With Skoda Supercare and growing network across 180 plus cities, you never drive alone. Skoda.
A fresh legal and political storm has erupted over the University Grants Commission's new anti-discrimination rules for colleges and universities. The UGC's promotion of equity in higher education institutions regulations 2026 notified on January 13 has now been challenged in the Supreme Court. The Commission argues that the rules meant to prevent caste discrimination unfairly exclude general category students from the grievance redressal mechanism, raising fears of reverse discrimination. The regulation apply to all higher education institutions across India and aim to eliminate discrimination based on caste, religion, race, gender, place of birth and disability, with special emphasis on protecting scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, other backward classes, economically weaker sections and persons with disabilities. But the plea before the Apex Court claims the framework is exclusionary because it does not clearly allow students from the general category to seek institutional protection under this same mechanism. The petition seeks a stay on the implementation of the rules and argues that denying grievances redressal based on caste identity amounts to impermissible state discrimination. The matter comes amid growing public and political reaction. Shyam Sundar Tripathi, Vice President of the BJP Kisan Morcha in Rai Bareli, resigned from his post citing dissatisfaction with the new UGC policy. Shiv Sena MP Priyanka Chaturvedi questioned the law's clarity, asking whether it would protect all students equally and how guilt would be determined in contested cases. She urged the UGC to either withdraw or amend the notification. Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan has defended the move, saying there will be no discrimination and no misuse of the law.
किसी को उत्पीड़न होने नहीं दिया जाए, कोई भेदभाव नहीं होगा, कोई डिस्क्रिमिनेशन के नाम पे किसी को भी मिसयूज करने का अधिकार नहीं रहेगा। इसमें यूजीसी हो, भारत सरकार हो या राज्य सरकार हो, इसकी दायित्व रहेगी। मैं आश्वस्त करता हूँ उसको जो व्यवस्था हुई है, भारत की कुछ भी व्यवस्था हो, संविधान की परिधि के अंदर होगा। और ये जो विषय आई है, ये तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट की निगरानी में व्यवस्था है। इसमें आश्वस्त मैं फील करना चाहता हूँ, कोई भी किसी के ऊपर भी अत्याचार या किसी को भी भेदभाव नहीं किया जाएगा।
Under the new rules, every university and college must set up an equal opportunity center along with an equity committee. These bodies will handle complaints of discrimination and oversee implementation of inclusion policies. They will include senior faculty members, non-teaching staff, civil society representatives and student invitees with mandatory representation of women, SCs, STs, OBCs and persons with disabilities. The rules also introduce equity squads and equity ambassadors in hostel departments and libraries to monitor vulnerable spaces on campus. A 24-hour equity helpline will be mandatory in every institution. Complaints must be acted upon within timelines that too tight. The committee must meet within 24 hours, submit a report within 15 working days, and the institution head must act within 7 working days. Appeals can be filed before the ombudsperson within 30 days. The rules define discrimination broadly, including explicit, implicit, and structural unfair treatment, and link campus mechanism with the law enforcement if penal offences appear to be involved. Institutions that fail to comply face serious penalties, including loss of UGC recognition, denial of permission to run degree programs, removal from funding schemes. However, critics argue that the rules focus heavily on protection for reserved categories while failing to provide safeguards for those accused. They say that there is no clear provision dealing with false complaints, reputational harm or procedural protection for the accused, especially from the general category. The concern has now spilled onto the street. In Greater Noida, the Rashtriya Karni Sena and the several farmers and upper caste organizations staged protest march to the district collectorate. Here is a report. And you can see the visuals. The protesters submitted a memorandum to the UGC chairman demanding that the rules be withdrawn and amended to include representation from the general category. Critics argue that the danger lies not in the intent but in implementation, where wide discretion and unclear definition could lead to uneven and arbitrary outcomes across campuses. So, this was on point 2. In the third on point, Trump calls the winter storm proof against global warming. Science fact checks his claim.
टाटा कैपिटल 2 व्हीलर लोन्स के साथ इसने की अपनी नई बाइक की जिद पूरी।
Open it up, what do you see? A champion inside you and me. Run, sing, build, dream so high. Touch the stars, reach the sky. At Orchid School we all believe every child's born to achieve.
US President Donald Trump last week questioned the science of climate change using a massive winter storm sweeping across the United States as supposed evidence that the global warming does not exist. Trump took to his social media platform Truth Social to mock climate scientists, writing, "Rarely seen anything like it before. Could the environmental insurrectionists please explain whatever happened to the global warming?" The statement comes as a powerful winter storm moves from the Rocky Mountains across Midwest and southern United States and is expected to reach the East Coast over the weekend. Meteorologists warn that the freezing temperatures, heavy snowfall, and dangerously icy roads will affect nearly half the country. More than 230 million Americans are expected to be impacted in some way, either through hazardous travel conditions, power outages, or extreme cold. But climate scientists say the storm is not a proof against lack of global warming. In fact, they argue that it may be directly connected to it. The extreme weather event is being driven by a surge of frigid Arctic air colliding with warmer moisture laden over the United States. Under normal conditions, this Arctic air remains trapped near the northern pole by a massive band of winds known as the polar vortex. The polar vortex acts like a circular barrier, keeping the coldest air confined to the Arctic region. But when this system weakens or stretches out, freezing air can spill southward, bringing severe winter weather to parts of North America. Scientists say this is exactly what is happening now. Recent research shows that the polar vortex is becoming more unstable, and global warming may be playing a role in this process. While it may seem counterintuitive, warming in the Arctic is actually making some winter storms stronger. The Arctic is heating up nearly 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. As sea ice melts, less sunlight is reflected back into the space and more heat is absorbed by the ocean, a phenomena known as Arctic amplification. The extra warming is disrupting atmospheric circulation patterns and weakening the polar vortex, allowing cold air to plunge southward into the United States more frequently. In simple terms, climate change does not eliminate cold weather. Instead, it can make weather pattern more erratic, producing stronger heat waves, heavier rainfall, and at times more intense winter storms. Scientists also caution that a single weather event in one region does not disprove long-term global climate trends. Climate refers to pattern observed over decades, not a single storm or season, and those long-term trends show that the planet is continuing to warm. In the United States, winters are actually warming faster than any other season. This has led to shrinking glaciers, shorter cold spells, and shifts in snowfall pattern across country. Even as the eastern and central US face this powerful storm, parts of western United States are experiencing unusually low snowfall, disrupting ski resorts and water supplies. This contrast highlights how climate change can produce extreme weather at both ends of the spectrum at the same time. According to Climate Central, a US-based climate research organization, cold snaps across much of the country have become shorter by an average of 6 days since 1970s. Cold days still occur, but they are increasingly outnumbered by record hot days. Across the United States, the coldest temperature experienced each year have risen by at least 2.5 degrees Celsius over the past 5 decades. That means even when winter storms happen, they are occurring against a backdrop of an overall warmer climate. This is why linking one storm to the absence of global warming is misleading. Political rhetoric questioning climate science can confuse the public and distract from the broader reality that climate change is intensifying weather extremes, not cancelling them, and that's the truth. And in the last on point, We'll talk about Xi's most trusted general falls from power, what the purges say about China's military and Xi's dictatorship after a short break.
रश्मि, हाँ? ये मैडम बड़े शहर से छोटे शहर बसने जा रही है, बताओ। अंकल
अंकल, इंडिया के छोटे छोटे शहरों में ही तो है बड़े बड़े अखाड़े।
नए नए दावपेच सीखेगी और फ्यूचर में मेडल जीतेगी। और बेटा इनका फ्यूचर?
बड़े पापा, SBI लाइफ से इनका फ्यूचर सिक्योर है।
अभी तो इसकी जीत का इरादा पक्का है। करो पूरे अपने इरादे,
अपनों से किए सभी वादे।
SBI लाइफ अपने लिए,
अपनों के लिए।
ओह नो, बहुत बोर लग रहा है। Take it, date not bites. No added sugar, preservative के बिना डेट्स, बादाम, पिस्ता, काजू और शहद से तैयार किया गया Lion Dates Nut Bites.
Lion Date Nut Bites.
Red Fort explosion. Let's get you all the updates. Following the blast, there is of course a South Indian connection of Dr. Shaheen Shahid. Because this is news of national import that search operations are underway across the entire Al Falah University campus. The blast killed 12 people. Prices, however, of Nandini ghee have been hiked. KMF has defended Nandini is the brand. I've been getting a lot of queries on my phone. What's for the people of Karnataka? Okay, you can play tennis as much as you want to, but I'm the empire and I will say please. There is an eyeball to eyeball confrontation. Where is this going? What is the way out? The farmers, they can actually shake a nation. Both of you down because I can also shout Prashant ji.
तेरी एक जिद और फैक्ट्री वर्कर्स सब डबल।
रिटायर हो जाऊं क्या? अच्छा, बिजनेस के लिए लोन का आइडिया किसका था? पर बुढ़ापा आ गया हो।
इनकी जिद ने कारोबार भी बढ़ाया और रोजगार भी। टाटा कैपिटल बिजनेस लोन्स के साथ।
In China, under President Xi Jinping, even the most powerful generals are not immune from sudden political collapse. One of the Xi's closest military allies, General Zhang Yuxia, once considered the most trusted man in the China's armed forces, has now become the most senior public example of what Chinese authorities are calling disloyalty to the leader. China's defense ministry announced over the weekend that General Zhang is under investigation for what is described as violations of law and political discipline, language typically used by Beijing to signal corruption or political betrayal. The announcement stunned observers not only because of General Zhang's rank, but because of the long and visible closeness to President Xi. Just 2 years ago, in 2024, General Zhang met senior American officials in Beijing, including then US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Sullivan later recalled that the Zhang spoke with unusual confidence and openness. He said General Zhang did not behave like someone worried about pleasing Xi Jinping or watching his words. Instead, he appeared self-assured, a man who believed he stood securely within the Xi's inner circle. That image has now collapsed. General Zhang's downfall is being described by analysts as far more significant than the dozens of other military commanders removed during Xi Jinping's sweeping purge of the armed forces over the past 3 years. Those purges were officially framed as anti-corruption drive, but they were also widely understood as a political effort to root out any senior officers whose loyalty to Xi was uncertain. Even so, few expected General Zhang to be targeted. At 75 years old, he could easily have been allowed to retire quietly. Instead, Chinese authorities made his removal public, turning him into a warning symbol. An editorial published in the official Liberation Army Daily newspaper suggested that his alleged offense went beyond corruption. The paper accused General Zhang, along with other fallen commander, General Liu Zhenli, of undermining Xi Jinping authority as chairman of the Central Military Commission. It said they had trampled on the authority of the military leadership and had weakened the Communist Party's absolute control over the armed forces. The wording is critical in the Chinese system. The military is not an independent national institution. It is the armed wing of the Communist Party, and loyalty to Xi Jinping personally has become a central requirement. Political analysts say that the language used against General Zhang points to something deeper than financial misconduct. San Shanmei, a China military expert at the RAND Corporation, says that the accusation suggests a direct challenge to Xi's authority and possibly a personal betrayal. Jake Sullivan himself called the removal seismic, saying it raises serious concerns and serious questions about stability inside China's military leadership. For Xi Jinping, removing such a senior figure serves multiple purposes. It reinforces message that no one is untouchable, not even those with decades of service or revolutionary credentials, and it tightens Xi's grip over a military he has been reshaping since coming to power more than a decade ago. Xi has sought to turn the People's Liberation Army into a modern, combat-ready force capable of projecting power in Taiwan, the South China Sea, and beyond. But at the same time, he has placed enormous emphasis on political loyalty, embedding Communist Party supervision into every level of the armed forces. The dual effort, modernization paired with the ideological control, has created tensions inside the military. Some analysts believe that the latest purge reflects fear in the Beijing that certain commanders had become too independent or too powerful. General Zheng's case shows how rapidly fortunes can change in Xi's China. Once presented as a pillar of military reform and trusted deputy, he is now officially labeled as a threat to party authority. It also underscores how personalized power has become under Xi Jinping. So this is all I had on Point tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Good night.
रश्मि, ये मैडम बड़े